Uzbekistan, a landlocked Central Asian nation known for its rich cultural heritage and strategic location along the ancient Silk Road, has a history that spans thousands of years and reflects a blend of diverse cultures, empires, and religions. The land that comprises modern-day Uzbekistan was once a melting pot of civilizations, where Persian, Turkic, Arab, and Mongol influences converged. Its cities, including Samarkand, Bukhara, and Khiva, have witnessed the rise and fall of empires and have served as centers of trade, scholarship, and culture. This documentary explores the history of Uzbekistan, from its ancient origins and the Silk Road era to the influence of Islam, the Mongol invasion, the rise of the Timurid Empire, and its integration into the Russian Empire, Soviet Union, and eventual independence. Ancient history and early settlements. Uzbekistan has a long history of human settlement, with archaeological evidence indicating that people inhabited the region over 5,000 years ago. Early settlers were attracted to the fertile lands along the Darya and Darya rivers, which supported agriculture and early urbanization. By the first millennium BCE, cities like Samarkand, then known as Afrasiab, and Bukhara had emerged as major urban centers, attracting traders and settlers from various regions. During this period, Uzbekistan was inhabited by several Indo-Iranian tribes, including the Sogdians and the Bactrians. The Sogdians, in particular, were influential as traders along the Silk Road, acting as intermediaries between the East and the West. The region was initially part of the Timurid Empire, the vast Persian Empire founded by Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE. This Persian influence brought administrative organization, Persian language, and Zoroastrianism, which became a prominent religion in the region. In the 4th century BCE, Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire, bringing Hellenistic culture to Central Asia. Alexander's conquest of cities like Samarkand introduced Greek ideas, art, and architecture to the region. This Hellenistic influence was relatively short-lived, but left a lasting legacy that blended with local traditions, setting the stage for the cultural diversity that would characterize Uzbekistan in the following centuries. The Silk Road and the rise of trade. By the 2nd century BCE, Uzbekistan was an integral part of the Silk Road, the famous trade route that connected China to the Mediterranean and facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures. The Silk Road transformed Uzbekistan's cities into bustling hubs of commerce and culture. Samarkand, Bukhara, and Khiva became wealthy cities, known for their bazaars, artisans, and skilled merchants. The Sogdians, known for their linguistic and commercial skills, played a major role in the Silk Road trade. They acted as merchants, interpreters, and even diplomats, helping to spread not only goods, but also religious beliefs, such as Buddhism and Zoroastrianism, along the trade routes. This era marked Uzbekistan as a place of cultural exchange, where influences from China, India, Persia, and the Mediterranean converged, creating a vibrant and diverse society. Buddhism was introduced to Uzbekistan during this time, and archaeological sites in places like Termez reveal the presence of Buddhist monasteries, stupas, and art. The Silk Road allowed for the coexistence of different religions and philosophies, making the region a center of intellectual and cultural diversity. The Islamic conquest and the Golden Age of Central Asia. The 7th and 8th centuries brought significant change to Uzbekistan with the arrival of Islam, introduced through Arab conquests. The Umayyad Caliphate extended its control into Central Asia, bringing not only Islam, but also new cultural and administrative influences. By the 9th century, Uzbekistan had become part of the Persian Samanid Empire, which played a crucial role in promoting Islamic culture and scholarship. Under the Samanid rule, Bukhara emerged as a major center of Islamic learning and became known as the Pillar of Islam. The Samanids established mosques, madrasas, and libraries, attracting scholars and poets from across the Muslim world. It was during this period that some of the most influential Islamic scholars were born, including al-Biruni and the physician Avicenna, also known as Ibn Sina, both of whom contributed greatly to science, medicine, and philosophy. The introduction of Islam had a profound impact on the cultural and social landscape of Uzbekistan. Islamic architecture flourished, and the cities were adorned with beautifully designed mosques, madrasas, and mausoleums, many of which still stand today as iconic landmarks. The region became an intellectual hub, and the synthesis of Islamic, Persian, and Turkic influences gave rise to a unique cultural identity that endures in Uzbekistan to this day. In the early 13th century, Uzbekistan faced one of its most devastating invasions when Genghis Khan and his Mongol armies swept through Central Asia. The Mongol conquest brought widespread destruction, particularly in cities like Samarkand and Bukhara, which were largely destroyed. The Mongols' brutal tactics disrupted trade and led to a significant decline in the population and urban life. After Genghis Khan's death, the empire was divided among his descendants, and Uzbekistan became part of the Chagatai Khanate, ruled by Genghis Khan's son Chagatai. Despite the initial destruction, the Mongol rulers eventually embraced Islam and assimilated into the local culture, leading to a period of relative stability. The Pax Mongolica, established by the Mongols, facilitated trade along the Silk Road, allowing Uzbekistan's cities to gradually recover and regain their importance as centers of commerce and culture. In the late 14th century, Uzbekistan witnessed the rise of one of its most influential empires, the Timurid Empire, led by the conqueror Timur, also known as Tamerlane. Timur established his capital in Samarkand, transforming it into a grand city filled with monuments, palaces, and mosques. Under Timur and his successors, Uzbekistan experienced a cultural renaissance that produced some of the most beautiful Islamic architecture and advanced scientific knowledge. Timur was known for commissioning grand architectural projects that showcased his power and vision. Some of the most famous landmarks from this period include the Gur-i-Amir Mausoleum, where Timur is buried, the Bibi Khanim Mosque, and the Registan Square in Samarkand. The Registan, with its beautifully decorated madrasas, remains one of the most iconic symbols of Central Asia's architectural heritage. Timur's descendants, particularly his grandson Ulugh Beg, made significant contributions to science and education. Ulugh Beg was an accomplished astronomer and mathematician who built an observatory in Samarkand that became one of the leading centers of astronomical research in the medieval world. The Timurid period marked a high point in Uzbekistan's history, as the region became a center of art, science, and intellectual achievement. The Uzbek Khanates. After the decline of the Timurid Empire in the early 16th century, Central Asia was divided into smaller khanates, including the Khanate of Bukhara, the Khanate of Khiva, and the Khanate of Kokand. These Uzbek Khanates were independent states that continued the Islamic and Turkic traditions of the region. Each Khanate had its own rulers, but they shared similar political and cultural structures. The Uzbek Khanates continued to thrive as centers of trade, and they preserved many of the architectural and artistic traditions of the Timurid period. However, they also faced frequent conflicts with each other and with neighboring powers, including Persia and the expanding Russian Empire. These internal divisions and external pressures made the region vulnerable to foreign conquest, setting the stage for Russian expansion into Central Asia. Russian conquest and incorporation into the Russian Empire. In the 19th century, the Russian Empire began expanding southward, seeking to gain control over Central Asia's strategic routes and resources. By the 1860s, Russian forces had defeated the Uzbek Khanates, and Uzbekistan became part of the Russian Empire. This period of colonization brought significant changes to the region, including new administrative structures, infrastructure projects, and economic policies aimed at exploiting local resources. The Russian Empire introduced modern industries, transportation, and education, but it also disrupted traditional life and led to the marginalization of local elites. The focus on cotton production increased dramatically under Russian rule, a policy that would later contribute to severe environmental degradation in the region, particularly the Aral Sea crisis. Although Uzbekistan benefited from some modernization, Russian control also intensified social inequalities and resentment among the local population. Soviet rule and the transformation of Uzbekistan. Following the Russian Revolution in 1917, Uzbekistan became part of the Soviet Union as the Uzbek Soviet Socialist Republic in 1924. Under Soviet rule, Uzbekistan experienced significant social, economic, and political changes. The Soviet government implemented policies aimed at modernizing the economy, increasing literacy, and promoting secularism. However, these policies also suppressed Islamic practices, traditional customs, and local languages. The Soviet administration promoted the cultivation of cotton on a massive scale, turning Uzbekistan into one of the world's largest cotton producers. This emphasis on cotton led to extensive irrigation projects that severely damaged the region's environment, most notably causing the desiccation of the Aral Sea. The loss of the Aral Sea, once one of the largest lakes in the world, has had devastating consequences for the region's ecosystem and the health of local communities. Despite Soviet repression, the period also saw significant industrial development, improvements in healthcare and education, and increased participation of women in the workforce. However, Soviet policies created lasting challenges, including economic dependency on cotton and environmental degradation, that continue to affect Uzbekistan today. Independence and modern Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan declared independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, marking a new chapter in its history. Islam Karimov, who had served as the first secretary of the Communist Party of Uzbekistan, became the country's first president and established an authoritarian government. Karimov's administration emphasized stability and national identity, but restricted political freedoms and suppressed opposition. In the years following independence, Uzbekistan pursued economic reforms aimed at achieving self-sufficiency. But progress was limited due to state control over the economy and widespread corruption. Karimov's government promoted Uzbek culture and history, reviving the legacy of figures like Timur to foster national pride. However, human rights abuses, lack of democratic reforms, and economic challenges created widespread discontent. After Karimov's death in 2016, Shavkat Mirziyoyev became president and introduced a series of reforms aimed at modernizing the economy, improving governance, and fostering regional cooperation. Mirziyoyev's administration has worked to open Uzbekistan to foreign investment, improve relations with neighboring countries, and allow greater political participation, though limitations on civil liberties remain.